Okay, today another episode of Tasch Talks and Tasch and construction in general in New Orleans. And today we are overwhelmed, excited to welcome Rachelle Albright, Albright Management Strategies. And I've known Rachelle for a number of years. And her background is construction. And today we're going to find out more about what she has coming up, how she found her way into her new company, which is not actually very new, but been around for a while. And so welcome, Rachelle.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here with you all, and it's a pleasure to talk about construction.
Yeah.
And that's the format. Format. That the idea is what's happening in New Orleans construction, and how can we bring it out to people, to see people that maybe they've heard about but they haven't had a chance to hear their story. So tell us, how did you wind up in construction? How did you find your way into your own business, which is already kind of a difficult thing to do?
Sure. So my background is construction management. Worked for a general contractor for 20 so odd years between 96 and 2017. And I would say it was probably, as far as the switch from general contracting business to owner's rep, was throughout all of our work, primarily, which was heavily educational projects. I saw the challenges that the owners and i.e. school leaders were having as far as the whole process through design and construction, truly being an active role and representative on the project as the owner. And so it really kind of sparked my interest from a standpoint of, being their liaison, through the whole process, i.e. through design and construction, and to help them manage the process, because it is a pretty, laborious time frame. I mean, design of projects can span from anywhere from a year to 2 or 3, and then of course construction projects has their own litany of duration. So I just became a lot more interested in serving in that singular role on a construction project.
And how did that change when you started your own business? I mean, that gives you must have had the concept, the idea, you've seen other construction management companies and firms, and how were you going to position yourself in the market?
Well, I think with the background of working for a general contractor and, understanding, operations, estimating, pre-construction roles is one from the standpoint that, with the owner and their involvement, I just said, hey, this is something that is a real need for clients, that they have someone pretty much in the day to day. And that's where I think the challenge is that, the owners with their business, that they were trying to operate and run their own business on a day-to-day basis. So adding another layer of what I would call processes and communication, to their day job is, pretty strenuous. So, from my perspective, I'm kind of their eyes and ears on a day-to-day basis with the contractor and architects, and with the background of people that I've worked with in the industry. I knew a lot of the architects and design firms and
Right.
a lot of the general contractors. So, I think that there was a rapport from a standpoint of, this individual, knows construction. And from there, being, the sole liaison for an owner was kind of an easy switch.
Yeah. And I don't know really if a lot of owners, if this is their first really big project, they might not even know something like this exists, right? But
Sure.
if I'm a principal, for example, I know nothing about construction, right? So that's what you're saying. They have this day job dealing with hundreds and hundreds of kids every day. They don't need to take on construction too, and you can kind of translate, right, all those.
Correct. Yes. And, it typically, the owner has a separate contract with the architect and the design firm, and then a separate contract with the contractor. And so, from a standpoint of responsibility and roles, there's a lot to manage, both contractually as well as just the process itself of, going through design and construction. The involvement and participation from the owner's, end is really critical to the things that are important to an owner. Staying on time, project staying on time, project being, within budget. Those things not only rely on, a contractor and the architect to partake in, but also the ownership team.
Right.
And you learned construction when you worked in the firm. So what did you study at college? Where did you go to college?
So I went to LSU and studied civil engineering, and primarily on the structural side of the civil engineering curriculum. So, I had grown up in the industry, been around, construction since a very young age, and civil engineering, kind of was an exciting field to be in back in the 90s as far as, school. And, my interest was just from a standpoint that I had been surrounded by it for so long, and I wanted to continue being a part of the industry, after college and so on.
How many in your graduating class at LSU in civil engineering?
Oh,
Do you remember?
I do
The
not
reason I
remember.
ask is because how many were women?
That's what I could speak to. Probably less than 10.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah,
From
for
LSU.
sure.
So,
In
it was a
my,
huge class. Yeah.
And maybe there's 100 graduating civil engineers, or maybe not that many, 50 or 60.
No, there could be, in the 100. Yeah, I would say females in that curriculum during my time was probably 10%.
But then you go and you start learning about submittals and RFIs and scheduling and estimating and pre-construction and site work and subcontracts and AIA forms, and that's a whole different world.
Right.
And really that's 10 years or 20 years of that did you do?
Oh,
at,
yeah.
At the construction
I
company?
probably, I was more on the operation side from probably 96 through 2010. And so, yes, that whole construction management, side of the business. And that's why you see now we have such advancements in technology and innovation when it comes to all of those processes. But, at the end of the day, the management side of construction administration takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of attention to detail. And I
Right.
think that's where, from a standpoint of, females in the industry, it's exciting to be a part of that process. And we like detail. Those are the things that we like to manage and pay attention to. And so, yeah, the process of construction administration, very laborious.
Yeah.
And you were mentioning to me earlier about an epiphany. And at some point, there was an epiphany. Mm-hmm. And you were working at the construction firm and was an outside consultant.
Yes.
And tell us the story about how that kind of enlightened you, and maybe was the turning point or tipping point that you thought, maybe I should do something on my own that is more meaningful to me.
Right, right. So, yeah, we were working with a consultant to help us on various facets of employees and management and personnel. And one of their programs was this Crucial Conversations training, which is all related to communications. And, this book, Crucial Conversation, really strives to, in terms of having the hard conversations, the conflict resolution, is taking an approach not of a win-lose, but a win-win. And it was kind of that point, I had always somewhat been driven to, I have to ensure that, the company, quote unquote, wins.
Right.
in dealing with, all different levels of operation and project management. And so I think at that time, I really was able to kind of sit back and say, this is really how, you collaborate with all the different players, on a team, i.e. your trade partners, subcontractors, dealing with architects.
Yeah.
When you have a difficult situation or a difficult conversation, it's structuring the communication to where you have an end goal, but you manage that process in the flow of dialogue such that each party sees the outcome is not a win-lose, but more of like, we can make this a win-win situation. And so, yeah, I think at that point, after going through that training and being a little bit more cognizant about how important your communication is, in this industry, and then the mindset of working on a few projects that we did just in a construction management role, it made me realize even more that that's really what I wanted to do, because I wanted to be the win-win for the owners on their projects and helping them through that whole process of managing the contractor and the architect such that it does end in a win-win situation. Because there are times on projects where at the end of
Yeah.
a project that you have some difficult relationships, or even during the projects, it can get difficult.
I think it was worse 20, 30 years ago. Like old school construction just does not appeal to me. It is pounding each other, everybody's adversarial, everybody's got to, win, everybody's got to beat you. If I'm going to win, I've definitely got to beat the architect out of something. And the architect, so I was like, I just don't have the interest anymore. It's like I'm exhausted. We were low on a bid, and the owner said, "Listen, you were really low. There's not going to be any change orders. I'll tell you the story." And I said, "Yeah, I know, but I'm thinking the floor over there might need a different material, and it's not going to work as you expect." And she said, "Yeah, that's fine. If we do anything else, we'll just pay extra for that." And I was like, "Yeah, well, that's a change order." And she said, "Oh, okay." So, it's like I've been in situations where you're going to collaborate, and you think you're going to collaborate, and you just get your teeth kicked in. I was like, I can't deal with this.
Right.
And so if you're there, especially if you're representing an owner, I think there's sophisticated owners, and then there's people that just aren't in this industry, and it's just a mystery to them. Like you said, it's almost a different language.
Right,
And you're speaking
yes.
a new language. And for those owners and for those situations, it just, man, I would love to have a referee just kind of making everybody see
Right.
the way things should be. And you can play that role
Yes.
as
Yes.
I'm a referee. I don't know if that's fair. but-
Well,
Sometimes, maybe.
Well, and we were talking, earlier about, communication, and we saw a lot of changes during COVID. We had to switch to, the virtual meeting
Yeah.
sessions just to keep things flowing. And like I told you, I'm, when you're dealing with those tough conversations and trying to solve issues, I'm going to be the first one to promote, you got to get around the table. I think being able to
You mean face to face?
face to face,
See each
how
other.
important. I still believe that while the virtual, meetings can serve a purpose, truly and honestly in our industry, because we're dealing with, whether it's, reviewing plans or reviewing,
Right.
Elements of the design, that just can't be done, in my opinion, efficiently and productively unless you're at the table.
Right.
So, one of the things I know you asked about was, what did I learn on the Discovery School project, that we did back in 2018 and through 2020. At the beginning stages of that project, they were going through, a lot of, financing discussions and, meeting with different entities on the finance side. And one individual in particular used a term that I had really never heard, and it's not an elaborate term, but he said, let's make sure that we over communicate during this process. I was like, over communicate?
Yeah.
Like, I like that.
That's
You know,
smart.
it's what we need to do.
Yeah.
And you have to do that.
And it takes time. So you got to slow down
You do.
and speak and
do.
take your time and say
Yeah.
it again.
Yeah, and it's very easy. I mean, where, when you're dealing, especially during design phase of a project, and ownership team is in their day to day, and design teams, crunching their, processes. you got to take time out to get around the table, and truly walk through, what's being proposed and how does that work, for your operations, functionality. And it's, in my opinion, being at the table is important on so many levels.
Yeah. I mean, you can't be distracted at the table.
Right.
When you're on a virtual, you know they're doing 3 other things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
While you're on that call.
I might text you or email you something, but then if I got to sit in front of you, I might say it a little bit differently.
Yeah,
That's right.
right. You have
Yeah.
to be a little
Yeah.
more, respectful.
Now, I always think like of your role after the work starts, but I'm really curious, like you would consider yourself a consultant, a consulting firm, basically, right?
Sure.
I mean, a management consulting firm. So what do you do in the beginning? An owner has got an idea, concept. You mentioned financing, so then there's that. There's architects and design people to engage.
Right.
So what are you saying in the owner's ear, or what are you trying to bring forward to them?
Yeah,
early on.
Early on, one of them, in my opinion, in this early stages of design, and architects do a great job from a standpoint of you have to understand what the program is from the ownership's perspective. And by programming, I mean, you're breaking down all of the individual spaces, within a facility, understanding size, occupancy, functionality of each space. And, quite honestly, that programming, tool is a glorified, Excel spreadsheet, but it serves such an important purpose that, most owners, when you're, looking at that information, they can see it in black and white. Because where I find some owners might be challenged is looking at plans, looking at a floor plan and looking at elevations.
It's not normal.
No
It's
clue.
just, it's images and pictures.
Right.
But, the background of that is just the breakdown of all of the spaces. And it truly is, in the very beginning, one of the most important pieces and times to sit down and digest really how large or small places need to be, So anyway, I think, in my opinion, being able to sit down with owners and design team in that very early stage and make sure that what you're ultimately working through as far as a design concept meets the needs of all of your spaces.
I talked to an architect years ago, and he said the best client for me is the one that has specific needs, and he knows exactly, or she knows exactly what they want. And then I'm not guessing. The most difficult one, and you mentioned, this is the planning phase or
Programming.
the program, which I didn't know was like a real
Yeah.
architectural part, because I'm not involved in that part. And the program, when I'm doing the program for someone who doesn't really know, it's like pulling teeth. And I'm
Yes.
not sure. Well, maybe there's 10 people. We might want a door. It's like, oh, Jesus, now I'm not, it's going to take forever.
Right.
And so your role really can be, sit down, let's take it easy.
Put it on paper.
Let's put it on paper. What are you really going to be doing when you
Right.
walk in this space? And when you leave from here, where do you want to leave? And how do you want to enter? And that kind of stuff.
Right.
And really help an owner kind of, okay, now I see
Yeah, and
how
even
I'm
if
going
an
to use
owner,
this building.
like you said, that some are not, I guess, aware or just not sure or certain of what that needs to look like. I mean, as you start talking,
Yeah.
as you start just talking about spaces and, people, employees, and adjacencies, it just starts to flow. And I find that even, owners who are not, haven't done a construction project before, or just are challenged with, being able to work through that process, as you just start talking about spaces and things of that nature, it just starts to flow. But taking the time in the beginning to really process that and understand that, even before any drawing is done,
before.
anything related to a floor plan or conceptual design, hey, let's really take a look at.
But you still let the programming and the architect go through his motion. You want him to do that, right?
Yes.
You just want to supplement the answers and make them more meaningful, or
Right.
hit the mark better.
Yes.
Right. I mean, you don't
As
want the
you're talking
architect to have to redo over and over again.
Yes.
So getting that
Easy to
information
redo.
at the beginning is crucial.
Much easier to redo and revise an Excel spreadsheet.
Correct.
Rather than doing.
Do you use Excel, or do you use
Oh,
a
yeah.
specialty
No,
program, or you
it's-
just use
you can-
emails and Excel and
Yeah.
discussions?
Because all it really is just a breakdown of spaces, defining spaces, understanding how it's going to be used. And, it also helps you from a standpoint of just even early on, discussing the whole FF&E, as you start talking about outfitting spaces within a building, as you're looking at an individual space, you can say, okay, now I know we're going to need, this kind of furniture and this kind of technology. So, those things happen early on if you do it right.
Do you think owners, how do you set their expectations? Do you think most owners think it's going to be less money to build stuff? Do you think they have a lack of understanding of timing? How do you set expectation for owners? Because I feel like with your skills and background, you can set expectations,
Right.
and get people thinking about maybe that's not going to come
Yeah.
out just that way.
Well,
may not be realistic.
I will say,
And people say, well, you're fired. Because it has to. No, but you have to start
Right.
get people's minds right.
well, as you know, I mean,
Become a psychologist.
some of our, process in terms of bid procurement
takes forever.
was a typical design, build, bid. So when you design completely and then you bid the project and then the bid comes in, much higher than expected, you're at a standpoint or a part of a timing in your phasing as far as trying to go back and redesign. You're taking 5 steps back at that point. So
Yeah.
one thing that I generally promote, to my clients is, as the design is progressing, is to, engage a contractor. And you can do this in various methods, but understanding cost has to be done, in my opinion, during design. So when an architect gets through a certain phase of the design, it's good to pause and allow a contractor to do a budget estimate. And what I always, inform a client, if you're doing a budget estimate at 30%, that contractor is typically going to be conservative.
He's going to be
with
high.
their estimate. But, and the goal there is that you take a conservative approach because of
Right.
the design still has a ways to go. At the end of the day, a contractor doesn't want to turn to an owner and say, well, I estimated 10 million 6 months ago, but it's really now 12. So
That's right.
The logic is, let's be conservative, and then the goal is to, as the design progresses, to become, more detailed with the pricing. You get
Yeah.
a little bit more refined, and hopefully it's less than your original budget. So yeah, I guess to answer your question as far as owners' expectations about cost is, do that during design, and when you have the time,
Right.
so that you can process
Yeah.
what the end result may be financially.
Yeah, and in New Orleans, there's a handful of estimators, and they work for contractors, but they're well known. You probably know a couple of them, 3 or 4 of them, for doing just that.
Right.
And what if you do come back with at least 12 million and you thought it was going to be 9? Then your designer can now begin to think about where's the savings.
Yes.
We can look at 15 line items or 20 line items and say, oh my God, we didn't know millwork was going to be,
Right.
are we really buying $3 million worth of millwork? Is that necessary,
And you
or
can-
do we
you
want
can take an
that
approach,
much?
you can take a laser approach about, okay, these are the elements of the design that could potentially be, more on the higher end.
Do we need a $3,000 sink?
How do we reel that in? Or you say, no, I really need these elements as far as my design and my building. This is what it needs to be. Well, then fine. Okay, then what's next? What's another big ticket item that we need to take a hard? So, I guess overall, the idea is being focused during the design phase as to what the cost parameters and the cost issues are going to be. And such that you're not completing the whole design and then finding out, wow, I'm 10-20% over budget and I got
So
a problem.
when you went into business and you started, you already had some clients. You thought about who they were going to be, and what were some of the early successes?
I would say, I think because of the educational projects that I had done previously, having some relationships with different school owners, that was, one avenue. I did some work for, Sacred Heart early on. We had done a couple of projects for them, on the contracting side. And then just through word of mouth, quite honestly, through associates that I had worked with in the industry, insurance industry, that's how the Discovery School came about.
Through the insurance industry?
Yes, construction insurance.
Really? Oh.
Yeah, so one CFO knew another CFO and said, "Hey, we're getting ready to build this, school. I think we need an owner's rep." So I guess at the end of the day, it was just the relationships that had been, already established in various facets.
Yeah,
You
20
know.
years in the industry,
Yeah.
building these relationships.
And what was some of the difficult things early on that owning your own business? Or was it just a relief to be in charge of everything? There's no downside.
I'm struggling.
That's a good
See,
thing. That's a good thing.
we've had this talk too. Women naturally,
And
we
how
just
long
want to
have
get
you-
in there.
How long have you been in business?
So I started in 2018. So this is
8 years.
8 years. And so knock on wood, I believe that the clients that I've worked with and the projects that, I've been involved in, from a standpoint of relationship with the clients, I met some new contractors along the way, and some new architects along the way, but I felt like they received me in a very positive manner from a standpoint of, being in the industry for 20 so odd years. I understand the needs that both parties need to keep the process going on their end. And so I felt very, welcomed to be on the team in the role of serving as the owner's rep by both design firms and contractors. And, I think maybe part of the element of it being, not as there's always challenges, but I can say that, the projects that I've completed, the owners and architects and contractors are generally walking away with a good relationship.
Yeah, that's almost impossible. You start as friends.
But that's her job.
I always
She makes
tell people,
everybody
let's see if we're
friends.
friends at the end.
That's
We
right.
hope we can be friends towards the end.
Yeah.
And do you prefer working with public or private or both, or does it
Both,
matter?
yeah.
And you've had both kinds of clients?
The school
Quasi or all completely public stuff?
They're under the, public school system.
Like Discovery
umbrella. Yes,
schools.
Yes. But then, mostly, private clients on the other end.
So something you just recently did that I think a lot of people in the area would be familiar with. We all are around Clearview all the time.
Yes.
You just finished Zia.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about how that went?
Yes, yes. So with the Zia project, I represented Taste Buds, which is their ownership team through Zia. And so Zia as the tenant to Clearview City Center as the ownership team. So what was a little unique on this project is that obviously Clearview City Center had their representation from the owner development standpoint, and then Zia as a tenant also had myself. And the project, I think, went very well from a standpoint of there were, constraints on getting started and finishing such that Clearview can continue on with their main overall, larger project. So Zia's being out of the existing location was very important to that whole project. And I think between Clearview City Center's representation, the Zia's group, myself, architect and contractor, I think the success of that project, again, was the way in which we communicated. The team really understood the importance of, we were very much at the table plenty of times. When the difficult conversations or some, issues would come up, we make sure we, set a time, get it scheduled and talk through it. And, we were talking about females in the industry.
Yes.
I'm very happy to say that the contractor was led by a female, Lauren Gibbs, with Gibbs Construction, Greenleaf Architects team, representatives on the project were also females. So there was a lot of women around.
Yeah, I think there's
No
a
guys
lot.
involved?
No, and it went great.
And it went great. On
But I
budget,
think-
on schedule.
Yeah, everything was communication was great.
Yep.
But I think that's something for me as from an HR standpoint, and what I do is I think a lot of women assume they wouldn't be well received in construction, and that's just not the case. It's just that there's not a lot of women in construction.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I think it's important that younger women understand that there is a place for them, and it's a really naturally just a really good fit. Like,
Yeah.
we know how we want things done, right? And and we make sure it happens, and the attention to
As
detail
opposed to us. You mean,
that we are used to telling y'all what to do,
okay.
right?
And I wanted,
I think it's a new world. I mean, I would say 20 or 30 years ago, it didn't feel so inviting maybe for women. But man, it sure has changed.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
a lot of women in construction,
Yeah, and it's
which is really cool.
I don't think it's a bad experience for
I mean,
women.
our
right?
own
I
group
think
is you,
it's-
Amber, Cecile. We've got a lot of ladies that are in the field
Yeah,
running work.
and what's nice
And
about the
requested
industry
and-
is that
people
there
are requesting,
really
yeah.
there is so many different facets in terms of the contracting world. I mean, from the general contractors' perspective, trade partners that obviously play a crucial role on these construction projects. I'm finding, more and more, that, there are females at the table, and, I just believe there's so many opportunities, for females that are interested. I mean, construction is an exciting, industry. I mean, it really is something to be able to drive around this city and look at the, number of facilities and businesses and buildings that if you were a part of, you get to point and say,
Yeah.
oh, I worked on that project.
it's always
I
been-
worked on that building.
Yeah.
It's always been one of the most exciting things for me, all through New Orleans. And if I drive around with my kids, I did that, or I was a part of this, or I did. Yeah, that's been.
Yeah.
I love that
Right.
part of it.
Right.
I love that. So if you're communicating and you're, it's like constructive communication, constructive, whatever you said.
Crucial conversation.
Crucial conversations. What are the crucial what are the problems that occur in a construction job? The typical things that come up that you would have to sit down at the table and get right. Mm-hmm. What are those typical holding points, or not holding points, but pain points?
Well,
What comes up?
Well, I think the things that come up are, just, during the process of, design, let's just take that piece in itself. A lot of collaboration, a lot of coordination. And, sometimes the design firms are obviously under a time constraint to produce. So, there are times where that coordination and, between disciplines and product of the design documents, there are things that get, overlooked.
We're taking
or-
too long to get our stuff, and when we get it, it's wrong.
Yeah. So, there are some things that, related to, during that phase. But, one thing that I'm finding a little bit more so in the process of, budgeting, some clients, and I do, recommend, hey, have some contingencies, nothing is perfect. We always strive for things.
I like that. I
to
like you
be
tell them that.
connected. yes, I mean, you do want your end product, obviously, to be quote unquote, the 100% finished, but,
Right.
there are just challenges and elements of that process that make that perfection a little challenging. So yes, there are some situations on a project where you're dealing with solving either elements of, the design or something that was, missed in the coordination. And then, contractors have some gaps too. And, so you also try to, allow the contractor to have their own contingency and it to be an open book, that, we're going to have some errors and oversight. So, we're going to define a contractor's contingency to deal with those and not have to go back to the owner and say, I have a change order to present.
Yeah.
So I guess, what to help with the world of, everything not being perfect, understanding that there is a level of contingencies that needs to be a part of the budget so that you can allow those cost impacts to be under that umbrella instead of like the whole overarching hate change orders.
Right.
I mean, if you look at Z, I mean, I don't want to pick on Zia's, but if you look at Zia's, the complexity, the number of moving parts, the number of people involved, the time it takes to do it, it's really remarkable. And then when you walk in the door, and I've been there now several times, the fit and the finish and the look and the feel of the building is really amazing.
Right.
And to think you build it out in the front in a parking lot where you got very limited space, and the owner obviously is chomping at the bit to get the people in the
Yes,
door.
yes.
So he's rushed. It's just amazing that it all comes together.
Right.
And that you don't, wind up all mad at each other at the end.
Right.
The owner obviously is a pretty, intelligent owner. He knows what he
Definitely.
wanted.
Yep.
And everybody that was on the team, made it happen.
Yeah. And I'm going to say that it's being at the table.
Yeah.
Like you said, you talked about all the finishes and, how great it looks. And I completely agree. We walk through, the design team walked us through the renderings and, us understanding what each space was intended to look like. And so we got to understand that early on. And, and also being able to question things, are we going to, what kind of flooring is going to be here? Is that going to produce any problems with noise? And again, it's just conversations flow more so than you realize just because you're at the table.
Right.
Start talking about different pieces, parts.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good features. I love that build. I love the bar. I love how the rotisserie chickens are standing right
Yes.
there, staring you in the face. She told me, we don't have Tuscany chicken. I said, but it's the roasted chicken with the Tuscany. And she said, but we don't have any. I said, well, I'm looking at 12 chickens that are almost done. She said, let me go check. She came back and said, yeah, we do have it. I was like, yeah, I'm looking at it. And I like, too, that there's 100 people in the building and it's quiet. It's not really noisy.
Yes.
It's not really noisy.
Yeah.
So of all those things, and now 8 years, probably dozens of projects, dozens of owners, what project do you wish you could do now? Here you are in New Orleans, and you say, I want to do a bigger Zia's, or I want to do a bigger school, or would really like to do a church, or would like to do a...
I
What would
will
you
say
really like to
that,
do?
and this is probably, goes from a background in the contracting world. I wouldn't say it's geared towards a specific project. It's clients asking me to come back and represent them on their next project.
Oh,
It's true. I mean, I
Yeah.
really, the repeat business element, both in the contracting world and what I'm doing today is more meaningful because,
Full circle.
yeah,
it says check mark.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah.
So how many jobs have you done for Discovery Schools?
oh, see,
You did something in Baton Rouge, didn't you?
we've done two. So they, yes, they have a Baton Rouge campus that was an existing school that closed. So the buildings and the facilities were there. They've gone through two phases of renovation. We're working right now on phase 3, which will actually be a new facility and building on that campus, one new building. So that would be 3 for the Baton Rouge campus, the Dr. John Oshner Discovery in Jefferson, be 4th, and then the high school on Loyola campus. And the modular buildings. So I've probably done
A lot.
Module. I forgot about
Seven,
that.
yeah.
I forgot about the modular buildings. And that was of interest to me, is the projects that you want. I'm trying to think of what else is in my mind. Shelby, you got any questions?
I want to hear about the coin toss.
Do you really want to hear about that?
I do want to hear about the coin toss.
Okay.
I can't believe that actually,
Yes.
like,
So we bid on the Gretna Police Station. This is probably back in 2012 or so. And we and another general contractor and it was a public bid. So they obviously opened up the bids, and our company and another had the exact same bid to the penny.
The
which
exact
just
same
seems
number.
impossible.
The
like,
exact
how-
same number.
The exact
Yeah.
thing. I mean,
Yeah, that's crazy.
yes.
And we're talking millions of dollars. not-
Yeah. I wanna
Right.
say
It's not like
a
$100,000 bid and you have the exact same number.
Right.
It was,
I think it was around 4.4. So everyone was pretty uncertain as to what the process would be to determine who would actually be awarded the contract. And after lots of conversations, it was decided that a coin toss would be the determining winning factor of the bid. And so prior to the coin toss, each firm, I think we had a 4 to 5 page legal resolution on how the coin toss would be done. And no lie. So
Do you flip it up? Do you toss it?
it went through the full process of how things were going to take place of this coin toss. So that was interesting. And then I think it was after a council meeting, and both myself and the other contractor were present. And the coin, it was not your typical quarter. They had embossed a coin with the police shield on one side, and I believe it was the fire department shield on the other. However, as we're standing there and they show us the coin and they tell us each side, I lost track of what was heads and what was tails. So I think I had to call, heads or tails, and I did such. It landed.
And you don't know.
and you have no
And
clue.
We all just stared at the coin on the floor, not sure which was heads or tails. But obviously, they informed us that we had the right side of the coin, and we got the project.
That's crazy.
Isn't it? And like the guy who flipped the coin, I was reading,
Who was the coin? Who was the guy?
was like the great grandson
Yes,
of
the police
of
chief.
the police chief that they were naming the building after.
Yes, yes.
Oh, that's
Like it turned into this big, huge thing, and I'm
sounds
like,
like a marketing dream.
this is
you know,
something
br-
only
bring the
New Orleans.
newspaper-
Like,
yeah, brings in this thing.
yeah.
And I want to say it had only happened one other time in the public bid market.
I'm surprised it's
We've
happened
did a
ever.
job where we were exactly the same number as somebody, but there was a group of people. We weren't low, but there was a group, and we were the same number.
Yeah.
Oddly enough,
Yeah.
one time that
Not
happened,
the winning bid.
but not the winning bid. That's right. Thank you, Dave.
We're in question, we're
Thanks
like-
for rubbing that in, Daniel.
Which is very frequent.
But then even when we're like within 20,000, we freak out. Like, wow, it's so close.
Right,
I mean,
right.
You go down that.
Oh yeah,
This is crazy.
yeah. On a $5-10 million job, you're within $10,000.
Yeah.
It's just mind-boggling. How did we find ourselves in that spot? But it's often nowadays pricing is so expensive. We were going to build a warehouse, and I think it just makes sense to buy a new warehouse. And it's like, Jesus, I can't believe how expensive construction is.
Right,
It just seems like everything. And I think labor is up now on jobs like when you're building these jobs. Do you feel like subs are struggling to produce labor, or does it just some kind of way happen, or do you not get that deep into the details of the job?
I mean, I think the cost element is just, a factor of, our industry has gone through waves and cycles of, cost impacts and, just the economy. And, we're all dealing with the different facets of how basic materials and equipment get impacted. And I just think, just the economy itself and the influx of, you know, shipping and all these other factors are just now causing the cost to increase. And again, I think it's just being able to dissect, cost information, breaking things down, having conversations about why is it that this is costing X. Okay, well, let's, break it down, understand it, and,
Yeah. There's building materials and methods that maybe change the value and the cost of things, and maybe we're just not creative enough. I know some, people are building prefab stuff and making.
Yes.
There's all kinds of new things in the industry, which I think is marvelous. But right now, if you sit down at the table, there's still, an adversarial role sometimes, right? I mean, you still have subs, even if you have the greatest list of subs and the greatest contractor and the greatest architect, there's still like some friction, right? I mean, occasionally there's some arguing. How do you actually concern yourself too much with that? Like, especially with GCs and subs and change orders and architects, I could just see a lot of jobs not going well.
I think when those challenges present themselves, it's, again, communicating, being at the table, talking through the issues. And quite honestly, at the end of the day, someone needs to take ownership of.
And maybe not everybody walks away happy. It's
Right.
just, sorry, it might not work out for somebody.
Right. And again, it's just, we have to talk through what are the best out solutions that we can present, because we have this situation, whatever it may be related to cost. What are some other opportunities or alternatives that we can mitigate it?
Right.
And then, just talking through what the options are. And then at the end of the day, hopefully, you're working with, companies that will take on responsibilities and where they need to.
Yeah.
Whether that's the contractor or design or the owner, it's just and then sometimes it's a compromise. We have this cost issue and it's a result of X. Well, okay, who's going to take responsibility? How do we manage it?
Do you think some of the bigger jobs are easier to get through, or some of the smaller jobs, or is it just doesn't? Is it just a crapshoot? It's like we've got the right team, and everybody gelled, or we got a couple of problems on the team, and we just kind of got through it.
Yeah,
There's always like a bad egg in the. You know what I'm saying? There's always a bad apple. Or not, or sometimes not.
There's always
Zia's
a bad
probably was
apple,
the
he
perfect.
says.
What's that?
Zia's was probably like a perfect team.
It was a great team.
Like Craig tells me, this sub you can sleep at night, you can rest well because we got the right guy.
Yeah.
When
And you say that, and it really makes me think of how important it is having the right players.
Oh my God, yeah. Like you got the right mechanical guy, you got the right plumber, you got the right
does
electrical.
come at a cost.
Yeah.
You might pay extra
right,
for that.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you always tell your owner, and your owner sometimes has to take the lowest price, but the day may come with some alternative purchasing or alternative methods that you might not take the lowest bid.
Yeah.
And some private work you don't take the lowest bid all the time.
That's right.
Really?
That's right. I would say that.
You could tell an owner,
I-
I think we would this team looks better than that team, and I think we gel with this team better.
Yes.
You have
That's
to look
gonna
at
cost
the
you an
willingness to communicate. Do you think they're going to get things done on time? Do you think, that makes a big
And,
difference?
Many times, what we're looking at, or we're looking through this lens of it being a number, being the cost, the lowest cost,
Yeah.
being what we're striving for. However, as we all know, you can go into a low cost situation, and then as things progress and as construction goes on, then
Yeah, you pay more.
you hit challenges and issues that have a cost factor. So you may wind up actually,
More.
paying more. But if you start off with, I think, analyzing the team, have they performed for you before? how has that ended? And having them on your team again, if you have a relationship and you know that, you can trust, their performance, the work's going to be quality. Like I said, that's not always on the lower end of the spectrum, because that comes at a cost. You're employing people that are managing at a higher level than maybe some that are at a lower cost. So yes, I do analyze, what the makeup is on a team, and if the evaluation is, this team and their players come at a little bit higher cost, but they've performed for me before. I take the intangibles sometimes, like we've talked about. There's reasons why clients go back to certain designers or certain contractors.
Yeah.
It's because of the performance,
Of course.
not always the dollar.
That makes sense. When's a good time for you as a consultant to get involved in the project?
I really like to be, on board when the architect is either interviewing architects or going through that process of selecting a design firm. I think it's really important for, an ownerships team and the design team to have a cohesive relationship. So if we can go through a process where, they being the design team both interview and demonstrate, what they've done on similar projects. I like to see an owner taking the time to do that process, because you get to see what and feel, talking to designers and architects, you kind of get a sense of, can I work with this group, or
Right.
I'm not really sure. So, yeah.
So the sooner the better.
Yes.
So don't call you on pay app 10 of 12.
That's a little more challenging.
That comes
things
with
are
an
going
extra fee.
When things, it's extra.
This is the emergency
Call
fee.
if you will. How many jobs can you do at once? Do you typically do one, two things? Maybe you have something in design, something in building.
I would say
Something like-
anywhere, but between 3 to 5 at the same
Really?
time. Yeah, I have 3
Jeez.
Active projects in design and 1 in construction. So
What's a typical day then? Do you work like 9 to 5? Or you
no,
work 6 to
so I still
4
have
to
that
2?
contract. I still have that contractor, in my blood. So
Tell me you don't
I'm-
get up at 5.
and
start
I do
working.
exercise.
Okay,
I
got it.
Get my. So
That's
yeah,
a good
I'm
thing.
at my desk by between 7 and 7:30.
Okay.
I like the early mornings. I've just always been a morning person. People in the industry know me to be sending emails quite early.
At
just
6?
Yep, could
Yeah.
be.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
And then, I probably work until 6 o'clock or so. So,
Is there a meeting, like when you're building something, there's a weekly meeting? Will you attend like a monthly meeting?
we
or
typically weekly. Yeah.
like
Yeah, I
an
like,
owner
again,
architects meeting?
like doing the, weekly touch base, and even during design. I really promote being able to just talk to the design team on a weekly or maybe every other week. But I don't like to see clients just allowing the architect to just, go and meet monthly, because again, you have to be at the table and being able to talk through design and questions.
It's a kind of nuance, though. If you're building something, part of the contract, part of the architect's work is the design, programming, design, I guess, documents, and then he's managing the project. A lot of times, maybe not, but yes, almost always. He's managing. So the nuance I'm thinking of is like, okay, well, then what is your role versus his role during that? He's obviously making sure, as he designed it, it is buildable and is being built as such.
Oh, but
And you're also saying, am I getting, is for my owner, am I getting?
well, there's a lot of questions that
What I'm paying for.
an architect. And
But are you overlapping him and
No,
almost duplicating his work? Or he's doing your
he's
work.
leaning on the owners to answer questions that he has about
The architect?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
During design, about again just
No, but during construction.
during construction. I mean,
And design too, but I was thinking more during the work. The work is getting done.
yes.
and he's making sure the owner's construction manager who's in the field, he's coming out, making sure things are getting done as he likes. And you're doing the same thing to the owner, but you just want to make sure the fit and the finish and
Right.
the product that you're buying is being installed and it's what you want. And it's happening as you want it to happen.
Right. But, I guess just from, again, being in the construction industry, even during the construction administration phase, I actively monitor, submittals and RFIs and that whole back and forth between
Okay.
a contractor and an architect. Because the timing of the answers and responses to all of those, again, just equates to the overall construction schedule.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm watching those processes and pinging people on, hey, where is this? When's that RFI? Where is that RFI being answered?
What role is technology playing in the jobs that you've done, like in submittals and RFIs and other coordination and communications?
yeah.
Can you log into Procore somewhere and see daily
Oh,
logs?
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
You have cameras on jobs where you can see. Where,
I don't, but I mean, I know, the
Jobs are
contractors
set
are,
up that way.
set up that way.
Right.
But I mean, again, in the field, it's very common for, the superintendents to, have their iPads and being able to physically, pull up, certain
Mm-hmm.
drawings, right there in the field and just to be able to talk through, again, if there's questions about how a detail looks or, that technology from a standpoint of both in the field as well as operationally, in the offices has allowed, I think, people to immediately address and talk through a situation rather than taking the time to, got to go back to the office.
Yeah.
You can do it real time now.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And your own office, you're using some technology. Obviously, you're using, you said spreadsheets and so forth. But are there other softwares that you potentially?
I think
could
that, like you
use
mentioned,
that
the
eventually-
Procore element of, that the contractors and architects use to, allow the processes and
Yeah.
information to go back and forth. Now that's pretty common. And, for myself, it allows me to, from a dash,
You can see
see it. Yeah. I can
more
see what's
visible,
happening.
a lot more visibility.
Right.
When an owner hires you and then you are actively engaged, you're going to be, I mean, this is a long run thing. It could be, Zia's was 6 months or 8 months, 12 months. You got to get along with these people, right? I mean,
That's
you
right.
just can't be mad at each other.
That's right.
We have to see each other so often.
Yeah.
Best to get along and make it work.
That's right. And
But
again,
why am I thinking it's always so adverse? It's not always so. I mean, you go through jobs that are just, beautiful. You wish all of them were like that.
right.
And there's good jobs and bad jobs.
There is. Well, and
things happen.
I think, maybe
So tell us the worst job. It wasn't Zia's.
I was thinking,
And all the discovery schools went off without
yeah,
a hitch.
great.
Nobody blew
Went off
anything
great.
up and
I think
it got built.
the challenge and, like you said, where, people walk away not unhappy, I would say that probably is because they didn't really take the time to sit down with the interested parties and talk through, and to work towards a solution. We all deal with challenges, but you have to be able to break it down. And, like you said, sometimes you do walk away and,
Not everybody's happy.
but
okay.
that's all in how a conversation is conducted
Right.
and how people take accountability and responsibility of their whatever
Yeah.
issues or
I mean,
errors or whatnot.
I could think of 1,000 things, but just on top of them, a brick mason is 4 months behind. That's affecting everybody.
Yeah.
What are we going to burn him at the stake? I mean, we can't kill him.
Right.
We want to, but we can't. And so we have to find a way to get through it
Right.
and minimize the impact to everyone. So those things happen.
Yeah.
You don't want them to happen, but if you could see it if you could see it earlier,
Yes.
you can and you can see that thing happening, in a month. Now you got ahead of it. You can
Right.
start to fix it before it actually occurs.
Right,
And a good superintendent and a good project
Yes.
manager can help you in that way.
right, right.
And you might tell them a little bit about that. Like, this could be happening.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
please keep an eye
Keep
open.
an eye on, right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. The class may take 8 months. You know.
Right.
Maybe we should order it. you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, I can't thank you enough.
Oh, well, I
Yeah.
thank you both and all of you for
I've
having
learned
me
I've learned a few things. Like, I really think what you said about pricing the job up early with 10 to 30% documents can
Yeah.
really lead to fixing a problem before it
Yes.
becomes a problem. You
Absolutely.
got something to do. Learned a lot about how a consultant can come and help an owner, and probably the value is, I mean, I'm spending $40 million to build a school. I'm spending a little bit less with you to make sure. I'm assuming, just an assumption. And you bring a lot of value
Right.
and potentially solve problems before they occur. So I learned that, and I can't thank you enough for being here.
Thank you all.
Shelby, you got anything you want to add?
I've enjoyed it. I love talking
About all that?
about this kind of stuff, and just to piggyback on that, yeah, I mean, it's nice to. I think some people might see it as an added expense, but really, I mean, you look at it, you're saving the money for sure. I mean, you're making sure stuff goes over smoothly and on time.
And time is money. I'm a
Right.
big, so from a standpoint of, the owner, if there was not a me on board, that person or someone in their organization absolutely has to be a part of that process. So they're being taken away either, from their normal job. So, yes, I feel that, spending the dollars on, someone that is going to commit to being there full time for you is worth it.
Well, we're
Right,
talking about
especially
you-
with 20 years experience.
You're talking about supplementing the owner, but really you can almost take the owner's place. I can think of a lot of owners that say, I don't have time to manage and build that broad. That's on you. I'm going to go do the things that I
Right.
need to do.
Yes.
I've got a day job.
I got a business to
I got a
run.
day job.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So that's another facet we didn't mention. But thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
It was great
Thank
having
you.
you. Thanks.
Enjoyed it.